Good evening. 33 years in 31 days, day 30, looking at 2019. Andrea, I can already see you're in here already. Welcome along. 20 other people watching across Twitter, Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube. Welcome along, everybody. This is the penultimate broadcast, 31 days, and we're on day 30. And so we're looking at 2019. In my policing career. Mercedes, good evening, welcome along. If you watched last night, you'll know that there was a great big blank for 2019. And if I had my iPad actually open, there's still a great big blank for 2019. So what I thought I'd do first of all is, as I was flicking through the photographs that I've collected together, I suddenly realised there was some that I hadn't used and hadn't talked about, which are from 2017, and they're worthy of mention. So, and you know, I'll share them with you. So, 2017, there were some awards towards the very end of the year, and I was invited to go. I was nominated in one of the categories. I think the best tweeting sergeant or something like that. I think it was, and it was the Police Twitter Awards. And the Police Twitter Awards were a really interesting award thing because a whole lot of people got behind it. A whole crowd of people were happy to put money in to fund them. Forces were happy to host and do things, but it all stemmed from one individual member of the public who wanted to say thank you to police officers that were doing great work on Twitter. And you think, what a testimony to how far we'd come since 2011 when I started on social, was that we'd come so far that we're doing stuff like that. And in 2017, the awards were being hosted by West Yorkshire Police, and Constable Chaos was going. So it was quite a day. Constable Chaos drove here to my house, left his car here. I got a hire car from work. He jumped in the hire car with me. We then drove over and to another location and picked up Dan Halliwell, and then we headed out to West Yorkshire across the M62. Had a stop on the way, and then eventually got to their training and public order and something or other main office sort of place, just off the M1 in West Yorkshire. And we're at the presentation ceremony there, and there is a photograph of me with Dan Halliwell. Dan Halliwell 01. If you don't follow him, you flipping well should be. But Dan won the best individual tweeting officer. I didn't win my category, which is fine. But I can't remember who won it now. Oh, no, yes, I can. Yes, I can. And there's a picture coming up in a second. So Dan was there. He'd come over with us and what have you. And he won his award. He was flabbergasted. He didn't quite know what to say, really. But lovely officer, nice guy. And he became very much heavily involved in later years, 2018, 2019. And I think even then, very heavily involved with our drone use within force. And he's now gone on to a national role and doing really, really well for himself. So very pleased for Dan. A couple of other photographs. There's a lovely photograph. Sergeant Paul Cording on the right-hand side there. He won the best tweeting sergeant. Again, if you don't know Paul Cording on Twitter, Oscar Romeo 1268, I think. Well, then he is definitely worth a follow. North Yorkshire Police, and in the middle, who, from what I can gather, and I don't know why, he's no longer on Twitter, and that's Sergeant Chris Harris from Norfolk and Suffolk. And those two guys have been instrumental in helping me push the "Don't Stream and Drive" message out since 2016, and it was so lovely just to catch up with the two of them. And I'm 6 foot, and suddenly I look small in their company. The pair of them are huge. But there we go. Paul and Chris that were there. I also had the opportunity to meet somebody else whilst I was there. And let's see if I can zoom that in a bit. Just hang on a sec. Boo, boo. There. How's that? Is that better? That's better, isn't it? I also had the opportunity to meet somebody else, and that is the most lovely dog you could ever want to meet. But he's a proper thief taker as well. And I'm sure some of you watching here, Ruth, I've just seen you drop in as well. I'll answer that in a second. I'm sure those of you that are in here will probably know who that is. But it was very pleasure to meet that dog and have my photo with him. And the photo was taken by the handler. And he said, "Oh, he's fine. Don't worry about him. He won't bother with you at all." And so but there he is. Andrea's got it. That's Finn. That's the fabulous Finn that is leading to Finn's Law and all the amazing work that Dave Wardell has instigated with regard to the protection and the law around service animals, which is fantastic. So that was a lovely thing to be able to do. So there we go. That was the end of 2017, and I thought it would be worth mentioning those things just because I'd forgotten them and they were important. 2019, I am still massively involved with my own social. I am slowly but surely distancing myself further and further away from. In fact, actually, Ruth, they stopped them ultimately because they were becoming a bit difficult to manage, and there were a team of people that were doing it in their own time and in some cases with their own money to try and make it work, and the voting process, and it needed to become more professionally run, and that needed investment and such. I think, I can't remember completely now, but I think there were a few other issues around venues and the like. Can't fully remember. But it was sort of resurrected, but then it died again. And so it sort of had it was dead, and then it sort of went, "No, I'm not quite dead." And then it really did die, and they went. And I think perhaps they'd had their day. I think perhaps if they were to be resurrected and done again, they would have to be done with a firm financial backing and footing behind them to make it work. But anyway, so 2019, I am moving further and further away from being involved with social media with the constabulary, and it reaches a point where they mess me about. They won't. I've given up a lot of time in the control room while I'm not doing other things to monitor social media, to look for breaking stuff that might be relevant to us and do some social listening and stuff. And I was always doing that through TweetDeck. And they changed all the passwords, which they do regularly. They changed all the passwords. And I said, "I noticed that you've changed the password. I'll need the password to log in to TweetDeck so that I can continue to do the work that I do." They then argued that it wasn't anything that they'd ever asked me to do. It was beneficial to me. It was beneficial to my role. And when I identified something, it was beneficial to the organization. But they'd never asked me to do it. Therefore, they said, "If there's a need for this, we'll need a business case to put it forward to show that it's necessary and important and vital. And then we'll have to look at a way of doing it." And basically, they were just putting barriers up all the time just to sort of try and force me away from forced social media. And I reached a point where I just looked at it and I thought, well, something that ends with you. And so I just sent an email and said, take me off everything. I'm not involved. I'm not getting involved with it. If you're not prepared to just trust me and let me get on with the stuff that I do, well, then I'm not doing anything. And that was the final sort of straw, really. And so I absented myself from forced social media at that point. I kept a login for the Force's social media management platform, which is where they want everybody to be. It's rubbish, but it allows them a certain amount of security. And it's very important for multiple users that they've got that sort of stuff. But for what I was doing at the level that I was doing stuff at, I couldn't do that with the platform that they were using. I needed another platform, and they wouldn't let me use it. So I gave up on that and just told them where to stick it, basically. So I kept my login to that platform in case there was an emergency when there was nobody there, and it was something that I could deal with. But having spent so many years in the control room where people would, across all the blocks, would say, oh, you need something with social media, Sergeant Jason Smith's the person to speak to. Go and speak to Sergeant Jason Smith. He'll be able to find it. He'll be able to post it. He'll be able to locate it and delete it. He'll be able to look at, because I had access to every single account across the organisation. So if somebody posted something accidentally and then they said, oh, I can't delete it, I don't know what to do, I could go in and do it. And it would save ringing the on-call corporate comms person up at 3 o'clock in the morning to say, there's a post on X neighbourhood policing team's Twitter account that's caused a bit of a stir and it needs deleting because it's wrong, blah, blah, blah. But hey ho, you want to get out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, you carry on. So I distanced myself from it at that point, and that was the end of my social media involvement with Cheshire Constabulary. But obviously, I continue to do the stuff that I do, and will continue to do that into retirement. So that was something that sort of occurred in 2019. 2019, we also had one of the rare now, but we had an open day at Force headquarters, where they open up the headquarters to the public, and they can all come in, and if they want to come up to the control room, they're brought in groups up to the control room. They don't generally see the control room side, but they do see calls, where the calls and the 999 calls come in. They take them up there and stand them in one of the rooms that's got all glass windows looking out over the calls. So they'd bring them in and show them that, and they'd have dog displays and public order displays, and the band would be there, and there'd be all sorts of other stands and things going on. Really good day. But it's a big security operation because obviously we're letting an awful lot of members of the public into headquarters where there's an awful lot of information that we can't let people have access to. So it's a very secure and very carefully managed operation, if you like. And we were on duty on the day in the control room. So not only were we sort of conscious of the fact that we would be having people coming into the call side of the control room. That photograph there is the actual control room. It's my desk where I would sit. And calls come in another room of equal size, a little bit further along the building. But we're managing that and managing that, knowing the fact that there's the public all over the building and in the grounds and doing things and what have you. So we all had to have extra special passes and all sorts of things to get to where we were going. But that was our team in the control room for the day. So we've got the Force Incident Manager on the left-hand side there. Then one of my fellow sergeants in the control room, Scott. Mr. Wrigley in the high-vis vest, who's now Chief Inspector over at Chester. Lovely fella, really nice guy, switched on, cares about his people, and speaks an awful lot of common sense. So he's doing very well for himself and a good fella. Anna, the other sergeant, is sat next to him. She always pointed out this photograph and said, "This was the start of your retirement, Neil." And I said, "Why is that?" She says, "Because we're all sat round you and you look like you're the old man sat in the wheelchair that we've wheeled out for a special event." But there we are in the control room in 2019 in the summer during our open day. Graham has got a question now. I'll just come to that now. Graham, what are you saying? In fact, let's put it up on the screen. Geek question, Neil. What system are you using to broadcast with the rolling lower third? Right. Okay. Well, I'm broadcasting, Graham, to Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube all at the same time, and I'm using StreamYard because it's a paid version. So I've got a few other little bits and bobs. I can take that off if there's a free version with limited hours. Well, then you end up with that in the top corner. But I can replace that. Actually, I could create my own and put my own little logo up there. I just haven't got around to doing it. But I'm using StreamYard. So with StreamYard, I can, I can add images to the screen. I can change the way that looks. I can bring people in on the broadcast and have other people talking with me on the broadcast if that's what I want to do. I can get rid of that. I can hide that broadcast and put something else up if I wish, as such. Or I could even, if I wanted to, I could edit that and make it a scrolling bar across the bottom instead. And then it does that. And then you get my name back. So it's a lovely system. I don't think it's completely perfect, but for the purposes of 33 years in 31 days, it's been absolutely perfect. It's been flawless, and it hasn't created me any problems whatsoever. So it's been a good thing to use, Graham. Which reminds me, I must cancel the subscription, otherwise it'll just keep charging me for every month that I'm not using it. But there we go. So I'll just have a quick look at my photograph, see what my next photograph is to remind me what I was. Oh, of course. Right. The only other real thing in 2019 that came about for me, which has been a fabulous thing for me, particularly so close to retirement. Those of you who know me will know that for many years I've always been involved with supporting the Project Edward campaign. And the Project Edward campaign is the brainchild of James Luckhurst and Tispol, who he does a lot of work for, or who he did a lot of work for, were happy to sort of support and encourage him with that project. So they took it on and ran with it. And he oversaw it, he managed it, but Tispol sort of owned it. And Project Edward was the European Day Without a Road Death. And it's been a massively successful campaign. It's won Prince Michael of Kent awards, and it's growing and going from strength to strength. But in 2019, I was approached by James and said, will you help us to pull the social media strategy and what we're going to do, and then and what we should be doing in September 2019 for Project Edward? Of course we will, not a problem. And after some discussion, and I started pulling some bits and pieces together for him, and I spoke to work and said, and he said to me at the time, he said, and I'd like you to come to Dublin for Project Edward Day, and we'll put you up and pay for your travel and everything, but will you come? So I said, of course I will. So I looked at my shifts and I spoke to the inspector at work and said, I've got this thing and I need to be able to go, and can I go? They're paying. It's just whether whether you'll agree for me going on job time or whatever it happens to be, because I was on duty, so I'd need to be released from duty. And then further conversations with Project Edward, and it turned out that they were actually wanting to sort of bring me in properly under my business interest. So I agreed to that, but ultimately then I had to cancel the request for support from work because it was then a private matter. So in 2019, I devised the strategy and the posting and the content and everything for Project Edward in 2019, and then ran the whole engagement of that through 2019, which was from August the 1st, I think, through to September 21st or something like that. in fact, September 26th. It was a huge, long slog of social media content with a lot of live videos as well, which was something they'd never done before, but were very well received. And I had a great time doing that. And they flew me out to Dublin. So I went out on the day of Project Edward in the morning, drove over to Liverpool, caught the flight, and got to Dublin. And at Dublin, I was joined by a representative, a lovely guy called Darren from Michelin Group. And we were collected by one of the guards and driven straight into the city centre and dropped at the castle. And then the day went ahead. We had the day. Those of you that have got very good memories will remember that we did the Project Edward stuff over lunch and into the early afternoon. Then I had the afternoon to myself. So I went on a wander around Dublin. I did a live video while I was in Dublin. I went to a bar and did the stereotypical tourist bit and drank Guinness, which was fabulous. One of the guys came and joined me, and we had a couple of pints and stuff. And then we had the TISPOL President's dinner in the evening, which was very pleasant. And then we went to a bar afterwards. And then in fact, I don't even know, actually, there was I wonder if the photograph is, I don't think the photograph's in there. I wonder if it's on my iPad. Let me just have a look at my iPad while we're talking. But from there, once we'd finished, we went off for a wander around the town, and we ended up at, yeah, there it is. I should get airdrop this knife back, the machine I'm using for the video. There it is. Save that to download. There we go. We went off to Temple Bar, which is what you do. We all had another pint of Guinness, and then we headed home. Well, we didn't head home. We went back to our digs for the night because I stayed over in Dublin overnight, and then I was flying back early afternoon the next day, so I'd got the morning to myself as well. So I had the morning in Dublin as well. But of course, Project Edward, there we are. Thoroughly enjoyable couple of days in Dublin. First time I'd ever been to Dublin, and operating as an independent social media advisor and engagement lead for Project Edward, of which in 2020 the whole thing changed quite dramatically, but I was still very heavily involved, and we'll talk a little bit more about that one tomorrow. But that was a great opportunity for me to get involved with social media and doing it for Project Edward, and it was great. And I'll just have to cancel sharing that screen and go up to sharing another one, and there we are. So that was the end of the evening in Dublin. After we'd been to the President's dinner, and then we'd gone to a small bar just outside the castle, where really bizarre. We're in a French restaurant in Dublin drinking German beer or something. Very culturally diverse sort of thing. But that's myself on the left. They've got Darren Lindsay, I think his surname is Darren Lindsay, who's from Michelin, Neil Worth from Gem Motoring Assist, and Neil Barrett, who's the web designer and does all sorts of other technical stuff for TISPOL and Gem and a number of other organisations. But it was the three Neils and Darren, Neil, Darren, Neil, and it was great company, lovely evening, wonderful people who've been very supportive to my social media journey and career, and continue to be as we go into the future, which has been, I'm very grateful to them all. So was Teddy Eddy part of Project Edward, where he truffled around forces? Isn't Teddy Eddy the thing that Jules does? It wasn't technically part of Project Edward. I don't know whether she was tagging in on it or not, but no. But Project Edward that was its last year as European Day without a road death. And one of the reasons for that was that the General Secretary had always been Ruth Purdy. So since she'd retired, so Ruth Purdy had kept a very UK focused element to TISPOL. But there was a change that had come around. So the new president was from Germany. General Secretary changed, and TISPOL have now rebranded themselves as RoadPol, which sort of makes sense because TISPOL, you sort of think, what does that mean? What is TISPOL? You might say, what's RoadPol? You might, it's not immediately obvious, but everything has basically shifted to Germany, and I think some of that is also probably to do with Brexit. There's a thorny subject, but in 2020, James has retained ownership of Project Edward. And he got some fantastic support, and again, we'll talk about that tomorrow. And that's it. 27 minutes with nothing to talk about, but I've managed 27 minutes. So I've proved to myself yet again that I can waffle with a load of nonsense for as long as I need to. But there we go. That's all. 2019. Not a very exciting year. My career is at this point starting to wind down. I'm looking all the time thinking, this is getting close to finishing. Only got sort of 12 months to go. And we worked Christmas and New Year 2019. And I promised myself the moment that, because you can't book leave more than 12 months in advance without special permission. But as soon as Christmas and New Year were out of the way, I committed to myself in very early January 2020 that I would not work my last Christmas and New Year, not at all. I wasn't going to work it. So I immediately booked them off. So I booked off from the 23rd of December through to about the 2nd or the 3rd of January and said, that's it, that's sorted. And when I looked at my finish date, which is the 17th of February, I thought, wouldn't it be lovely to just finish before Christmas and not have to go back at all? Done. Have Christmas and New Year and then just go into my new life, if you like. And I looked at the gaping chasm between the beginning of January and February the 17th and thought, it's too big. Never going to fill that. I'm never going to have enough leave and time off and stuff to do that. Cut a long, very story short, I did. COVID helped tremendously because suddenly I'd got lots of cancelled rest days for stuff that was going on. And instead of messing other people about, I just messed myself about. So I worked, and last year I worked so many days, it was untrue, whilst managing my own business as well. So it was quite a really tough year last year. But what that meant was on the 23rd of December, I walked out the door and I've not gone back. So that was something I sorted out right towards the end of 2019. I set my sights on that and said, definitely not working Christmas and New Year. And wouldn't it be lovely? Pipe dream. But the pipe dream came true. That's all though for tonight. 33 years in 31 days. Tomorrow is the last year, 2020, because I'm not going to cover 2021 because I actually haven't put my uniform on in 2021. I haven't. And I'm unlikely to, unless for some reason the smelly stuff hits the spinny thing and they ring me up and say, Neil, we're going to have to cancel your leave. Will you come in? But I don't think that's going to happen somehow. I won't be talking about 2021, so we'll cover 2020 tomorrow. And then I think really as far as tomorrow's concerned, there won't be a great deal to tell, I don't think, although as I've proven, I can talk and talk and talk, which is a bit weird because generally I can't. I normally run out of things to say when I'm sat in the pub with my mates. I end up sort of just listening because I've run out of stuff to talk about. I sit down in front of a camera and you can't just shut me up. But I guess if you've got any questions about the videos or like Graham had with the platform tonight, or if you've got anything that that's come up over the 33 years in policing, my time as a special, my time on social. Maybe tomorrow we'll do a Q&A. So if you've got some questions that you want to ask about me and my career, well then let's have a Q&A, and I'll see what I can do answering some questions within reason. But other than that, take care, folks. Have a lovely evening. I've got a beer on the side downstairs and some stuff that I've been watching and watching on Netflix that I'm going to continue watching. So have a good evening. Take care. Stay safe, and I will see you tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, and get your questions prepped. Give fair warning. Good night, all.